It's one of the mysteries of autism because we really don't know, kind of like the causes.
Go to like
and what
speech
happens
therapists and all that back then?
Yeah, we did, the speech therapy. And again, when I heard the words, we went to finally get the diagnosis. We had to go to a pediatric neurologist. We took him, and he was the one that told us that my son had autism. And I had no idea what autism was. The only thing I knew, when you mentioned earlier, was like Rain Man.
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
As a child, we have our own views and perspectives on the world around us. We were anxious to see our friends, go outside to play, and enjoy all the benefits that young people have. Seeing the world with innocent eyes and all the possibilities that were in front of us. Imagine growing up in that world without being able to communicate or understand how to express your feelings. Instead of being open to all that life had to offer, you focus on only one thing. Imagine not being able to interact socially with other children around you. We now understand that all children have a different path. Adults are here to guide and instruct, never forgetting that some will look at the world through different eyes. I'm Kevin Donaldson here with Mike Failace, and on this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we welcome Paul Cimins to discuss the suffering of autism. Being personally affected by autism, Paul has chosen a different path to help guide others through that journey. Paul, thank you so much for coming in.
Hey, thank you guys for having me on your show. Really honored.
Before we get into anything, let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody, but we do trust them. Go to toyotahackensack.com and let them find you a car. And your father learned how to work his car yet?
No, absolutely not. Listen, my father can't work he's still got a flip phone. Never mind working a car. Get all the new gadgets on it.
So please go out and support those who support us.
If it's not a Cadillac Eldorado, my father doesn't know how to work it.
Yeah, with the old whale boats. So Paul, thank you so much. You're doing so much. You're a big name in the radio business, and I'm so grateful to have you in here. Plus, we're going to talk about a subject that I know is very near and dear into your heart.
And near and dear to me also. I mean, we had the conversation before.
Yeah.
It's something that pulls up my heartstrings.
Well, I can appreciate you supporting it because obviously it's a huge cause that a lot of people need a lot of help today. So,
well, the funny thing is, and we'll get into your personal story, but autism is a relatively new concept. I'm talking within the last probably 30 years, but I don't even know how old you are. But when you were growing up, there was one kid you can look back on it where like, he was just, something was off. Something was off.
Absolutely.
What do they call it? On the spectrum.
And chances are they either had Asperger's or autism or something like that. And, that's just how it was. But now that we've identified it, we can help them live a little bit more of a full life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like you said, I think, you look back, it's like you said, one kid, maybe you said, nah, he was a little off, and
brilliant at certain things.
Very smart.
Unbelievable.
So the one kid I'm talking about, I won't say his name, but he was the most brilliant engineer. Him and his brothers, they were all pretty much the same. The most brilliant engineer. They used to take old scrap and they made a bicycle that was like 10 foot tall by welding frames together, or they made a go-kart out of a lawnmower engine, but it was an electric lawnmower, so they could only go 100 feet. But they were brilliant with it. But other things, I don't know.
Struggle with a lot of relationships, right? Not knowing how to make friends, or
absolutely.
They struggled a lot with a lot of those things.
But I mean, their mind works in different ways than ours. Like you said, they latch on to one thing. We got this kid in a town by me. I pulled up next to him one day. A friend of mine told me about him. He goes, "Tell him your birthday. He'll never forget it."
Oh yeah.
So I go up to the kid. I tell my birthday. He looks at me. Go by. Drive down the street. I'll roll down my window. He'll yell out my birthday. He knows everybody's birthday. I mean, it's genius.
We used to have a kid that memorized the phone book. He could tell you his phone number, and at first he thought it was a little creepy. I was like, "Oh, that's just John Buckeye." That was. I don't even know if John's still around. So every week we take a question from our audience, and this week's question comes from Steve_M. What is a parent's job beyond raising and providing for your children? This one was perfect. I actually saved this one. We got this one a while ago, and I saved it for you. What do you think a parent's job is beyond the normal stuff that you're legally bound to do?
I mean, for me, you want to, number one, let your have your children live better lives than you, right? That you want to obviously.
It's every parent's dream, isn't
That's
it?
the dream, right? You want them not to struggle maybe as much as you do, right? But I know for like me, my goal was for my kids to make a better world for the future. And I think that was always reside with me, is that I want to see my daughter. Now she's going to be graduating nursing school. Perfect example. Wow. Like, she wants to help others, right? And she wants to really go out there and make a difference. And I think that as parents, we can do that. We can empower our children to do that. I mean, my son Jonathan, obviously, we'll get more into it, but is not speaking. He is the voice of Autism Radio, right? So he empowered me to speak about the journey,
the driving force,
and the driving force behind Autism Radio. So,
Mike, what do you think?
What?
Besides how to shave.
Hey, listen, the hair is growing in. You're just jealous.
I am. I'm very jealous.
You're just jealous.
Mine's going away. Yours is coming back. I don't know what's going on.
I heard you say something the other day about he's got little peach fuzz going on.
Yeah, it looks like something else, but it's getting better this week. It's getting
soft
better.
as a baby's ass.
So when I first met Mike 25 years ago or something, he had that. He looked like
the high and tight,
the gym teacher from Beavis and Butthead, with the high and tight and the flat top and everything. And even up until probably 6 years ago, he had the same haircut. And then one day he comes in and it's gone. I don't know what happened.
Just didn't like it.
Oh, okay.
Like I said,
you look good.
Hey, thanks, pal. It's starting to go over like right here a little bit, And I didn't want to be like Merv from Impractical Jokers, with that just bald. So but I was in the hospital for 4 days and it couldn't shave my head, so I just let it grow. So now I'm going to keep it growing.
There you go.
So what do you think?
Put it in a ponytail.
What do you think? What's a job of a parent beyond the legalities?
I'd say molding and preparation. You got to mold your kid to be, an all-around person, respectful. You don't want your kid to grow up and be that little punk, that everybody's talking about. I mean, that's one of the proudest things that I have. Every time I was around town, people would say, your kids are so respectful. And, and that's what it is. It's teaching them the right way. And it's preparing them for the future. Like I said, you're going to fail. You almost want your kids to, I don't want to say you want your kids to fail.
You want them to taste that.
You want them to taste a little bit of failure.
This is true.
Just because they don't think that everything is going to be given to them in their lives.
Absolutely.
Not everything about the way we were raised was bad. Not everything, nor was everything good. And then it swung so far. The pendulum swung so far. I see my position in my kids' lives beyond, feeding them and clothing them and all the normal things, is to take those things that were good, being respectful, like you said, opening the door. I'm a little old school with that. Yeah. Open the door for a woman.
Be a gentleman if you're a guy, right?
Yes, be a gentleman.
Be a lady if you're a lady, right?
Right. I teach them that. When we go to church, my oldest comes to church with me. There's an elderly lady. He'll run out and go grab her purse, and that's like a proud dad moment for
Absolutely.
me.
You didn't steal it, or just grabbed it and brought it in for her?
He looked through it, but there wasn't much in there. So I take the lessons that were good. I try to be introspective when it comes to raising children. I take the lessons that are good, and then there's some good things today that I try to work in there. Being accepting, being patient. Where we were raised, the way I was raised, I wasn't very accepting and very patient, but that's the way I was brought up, and it wasn't the right way. So my kids live in a different world with all new different problems than we have. We didn't have social media growing up, and it's a 24/7 bombardment of information. We went outside and played. But again, I played Nintendo and Atari growing up, so I let them play video games, but I also we go outside and the joy of the outdoors, the joy of playing sports.
You got to let kids be kids, Let them be kids. Let them go through that whole experience. But there has to be a point where you have to teach them what it's like to be an adult, and like I said, lay the groundwork for their future.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we were kids, Mom would say, okay, go to your friends, go out and play, be home for dinner. Mm-hmm. That was it. There was no cell phones, no
and if you were late, they couldn't call you.
Yeah. But you were home, though, because there was a level of respect and I think also fear, because the parents definitely put a little
it's
bit
a fine
of
line.
Fear. Exactly.
It's
but
a fine line.
Not a bad thing.
No,
right?
not a bad thing. With my kids, my 13-year-old, he's 6 foot tall, all right? There's going to be a time when he's bigger than me.
Right.
I have to keep that competitive edge
It's like,
over
Of
him.
course.
Kick his
You go
ass
to the
now.
gym, you work out, you keep yourself in shape a little. You know?
Kick his ass now before
Got to
he's
get ready
big
for the
enough to kick
daughter's
your ass.
boyfriends too. You got to put a little intimidation in them too.
That's when
Oh,
you clean the guns.
Yeah, he was on the phone with his girlfriend the other night, and he did a FaceTime. And as soon as I walked in his room, the phone went down, and I said, "Let me say hi to her." And I made sure I took off my pants, pulled up my black socks, and
Oh God.
let's do it. Come on, But anyway, thank you
and-
so
and
much,
that,
Steve.
That court appearance is pending now.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Steve, for sending that one in. Keep sending in your questions. We will try to get them on the air. And don't forget to check out our Patreon. Go to sufferingpodcast.com. There is a link out there, and you get some special content like Mike's Hot Corner, intro reads, and some advanced episodes.
Behind the scenes stuff.
Behind-the-scenes stuff is insane. So, Paul, I know a lot about you. I've done my research about you, but I want you to tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So born and raised Wayne, New Jersey. Grew up. My brother and I are 5.5 years
Hillside or
apart.
Valley side?
I was Hills.
There you go.
So I was Hills. I had an interest in culinary arts. Ended up going to CIA, Culinary Institute of America. Was a chef for many, many years.
What appealed to you about chef work?
I think it's the physicality, but also the creativity factor. And it's just being able to, I think, do something that people enjoy. It's that gratification of like, I make you something really nice and you
Nothing
enjoy
beats
it,
a good meal.
And
if you're the pioneer of that good meal.
I grew up with that with my family too. Coming from an Italian family, Sunday dinner was a big thing, and food was always very important. So it was just something that was because it's not something that if I was going to tell you, I would talk you out of being a chef, honestly, because honestly, it's not
It's a tough
very
life.
glamorous lifestyle. You're working 12 hours a day. You're on your feet. You're working holidays, weekends. You miss a lot of family functions.
You're working when people are going out.
That's right.
So
But now, when it comes to family stuff, they want you to cook now too.
Of
'cause
course,
you're the chef.
of course.
So even when you're off duty, you're
So and I was lucky enough. I made some changes in my career, and I went more corporate food service. So I was working more Monday through Friday. Had a little more work-life balance. And then I had my own business for many years. Did corporate dining. Had several locations in northern New Jersey, and and I became a father. Right, I had 2 kids. I had a daughter, Emily, and I had my son, Jonathan Cimins. He, my daughter was born neurotypical. So we raised her. She was very talkative and chatty and everything, right? And then we look at my son, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 18 months, basically.
how do you diagnose an 18-month-old with autism? What are the signs?
Well, so for him, there was spinning. There was a lot of spinning. He would, spin. He would play with his hair, very, very focused on that. He would position blocks, line them up. There was a lot of quirky behaviors he had, and also words. He had vocabulary at the time. So this is the hard part for me as a father when you talk about suffering, because he was talking. He was developing. We went to the pediatrician, and my wife and I said he seemed a little off. Again, he had some of these quirky behaviors, and we're like, but the doctor said, no, he's fine, right? So this is our pediatrician, and little by little, he would repeat words. Like he would say, like, uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. But that was like a word he used all the time, uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. And he would say it over and over again. So it was just like really odd for us, And little by little, he started regressing and losing his speech. And it literally was like one day the lights kind of went out. And
Is
it
that
just
common?
stopped. It is common because I've heard it a lot of times in a lot of families. This has happened. And again, we don't know the cause of that, right? But there's some who are born, don't ever speak, and then end up speaking. So it's one of the mysteries of autism because we really don't know, kind of like the causes.
go to like
and what
speech
happens behind
therapists and all that back then.
yeah, we did, the speech therapy. And again, when I heard the words, we went to finally get the diagnosis. We had to go to a pediatric neurologist. We took him, and he was the one that told us that my son had autism. And I had no idea what autism was. The only thing I knew, when you mentioned earlier, was like Rain Man.
Yeah.
And Rain Man, again, very high functioning.
You were like, great, I'm gonna make a killing at the blackjack
Yeah,
tables.
exactly. And you look at, Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise in that movie, and you say, okay, well, is that autism? And that was not what we were seeing, right? And I just remember the doctor, I think, made a very bold statement. He's not going to be very affectionate. He's not going to love and all those things. So it's like, it's very devastating at that moment.
I'm sure.
And
because as a father, you have this little baby, especially a man. And I hate to say this because it is a masculine thing. When you have your boy,
yeah, it is.
It's not that your daughter is any less important
No.
to you, but it's like, this is who's going to carry on my name.
Absolutely. The legacy of the family, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's what we say. And then, I was a very good athlete, played a lot of sports. So you have a lot of dreams, right? And
Aspirations for your...
Yeah, okay, we're going to play baseball. I mean, I was fortunate enough, I went down to spring training and got to play at Yankee baseball camp and do some really cool things as a kid. I was hoping to be able to share that with my son. And then that was not going to be his future. It was devastating.
I'm sure.
And in a way, it was almost like a loss. It was almost like suffering a loss of a loved one because, again, not knowing what the future is going to bring, not knowing a lot. And again, you're talking like 2005. There was very little information about autism out there at that time. There was very little. So we didn't know a lot. And, my wife kind of just shut down. She really didn't deal with it well. I think for me,
but you still have another kid at home that
I
you
did.
Yeah,
gotta
you have to...
And I think and most people don't know this because I don't talk about my daughter as much. But my daughter was diagnosed right before that she was legally deaf in both her ears too.
Wow.
So that was like, what does that mean now? But the scary part was that when her brain, the nerve that's connected to her brain, it was like fragmented. And they were afraid as she was going to get older that it was going to separate and possibly she'd be completely deaf. And that was like terrifying. So imagine you got a 5-year-old and like almost a 2.5, 3-year-old. And like you get this news as a parent, and you're just like, and I think with me, it's interesting, some people, start drinking, doing drugs, right? You get depressed, you get down.
Start
for
doubting
me,
God.
Yeah, you start having all these. I think for me, I buried myself in my work. I became a workaholic, and work became my drug, I guess you want to say, at that time. Built my business really strong, successful, but I wasn't present for probably about a year or two.
Was it? Do you think it was like drugs and alcohol is running away?
Yeah.
Do you think your job was running away from?
I've heard that before. It's kind of like running away from a prairie fire.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, no, I think that was part of it. Obviously, I was there and providing, right, but that's not enough, right? And so I didn't do a real good job out of the gate, But then I realized that, I need to do something for my son. I need to find out some answers, and that's when I began my quest. And then 2007. We started, even before that, we started going to like support groups. And that was when the first, like, okay, there is a little light at the end of the tunnel. And,
but you now, autism there's a lot of autism diagnosis today.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them.
Yep.
Do you think that is, and again, this is hard to theorize this. Is it just they're identifying it? And when we grew up, like we were talking about earlier, there were kids on the spectrum, because I know autism is a very broad word,
very vast.
Yeah, I mean, you have high functioning versus nonverbal, all and everything in between. Mm-hmm. Was it just it was going undiagnosed for so long and it was always present and we just didn't see it?
I think it was that, and again, I think the detection got a lot better, and we're definitely focused on it a lot more as we provided more services and we started uncovering what autism is and how we, the goal is obviously there's no cure for autism, right? We don't use the words cure because it's not a disease, and people use that. Right?
I always say yet, and my son taught me that. Remember when we had we brought my son in for an episode, my 13-year-old. I think he was 12 at the time. And it was kind of like, what do you want to do when, I forget what the question was, but he always attached the word yet afterwards. He's like, I want to play professional football. I'm just not a professional football player yet. There is no cure for autism. There was no cure for autism yet. Who knows what the future can hold? And that's where all the research and the early detection comes in, because maybe they'll just unlock.
Well, that's the goal, right? The goal is to make sure, as a parent, I want my son to live the best life he can. So I want to give him all the resources and available. And we tried everything. I mean, and when I think back, like how much money we spent on all these different, I call them summer snake oils. We tried just about everything.
But you have to try everything.
And we did. And, I look back and I probably wouldn't change that. And if parents ask me about like, hey, well, what do you think about this treatment? I'm like, well, we tried that. And, we did see some benefits with some of the treatments. Like we did hyperbaric oxygen chamber. He did about 42 dives. We did see an improvement in his sleep and just some cognitive functions. But it definitely didn't, because we were told, hey, this is going to unlock the key. And we've had kids where they start verbalizing and speaking. Yeah. And that's just not the case.
You had said your wife sort of shut down. After the diagnosis of your son, did you replay the whole pregnancy in your head? Like, there's a lot of self-blame and stuff. What did we do? What happened?
Yeah. What did we get exposed to? Were we treating with the grass with weed killers and all this? I mean, we went through the whole gamut of everything.
Well, there's something, I'm going to put it into perspective for our audience. Our audience, take something as simple as social media. You'll have one post that hits. Okay, and then you go back and you dissect that post and you say, what made it hit? And I always thought about that with parents who have a child with special needs, any special need, not even autism specific. And they go back and they dissect and say, what did we do? You take a lot of personal responsibility where it just, there may not even be a cause.